At their annual holiday gala, my parents turned my 7-year-old daughter away from the door. She had to walk back home by herself in the bitter cold and darkness, clutching every one of the little handmade gifts she had poured her heart into, and spent the evening in a cold, silent house. When I discovered what happened, I did not raise my voice. I did not get on the phone and scream at them. I remained perfectly calm, signed a single piece of paper, and just 3 hours later, their carefully constructed little world started to fracture. My name is Sarah. I got home late that night, drained after a long shift as a paramedic. I was expecting the house to be quiet because my daughter, Lily, was supposed to be at my parents' big holiday gala. It is an event they throw every single year, the kind where the house is packed to the gills with relatives, with games and festive music, tables groaning with food, and the traditional sleepover that she had been excitedly marking off on her calendar for weeks. But that was not what I found. The moment I turned the key and pushed the door open, a wave of cold air hit me. Her small snow boots were placed neatly by the doormat. Her little winter coat was on its usual hook, and the small decorated bag filled with the handmade ornaments she was so excited to give everyone sat on the floor beside them, completely untouched, with the little name tags still dangling from their ribbons, exactly as she had carried it out that morning. I found Lily at the kitchen table. She was still in the same festive dress I had dropped her off in, her small shoulders hunched forward as if she were trying to make herself invisible. She was not sobbing or making a fuss. She was just small. "Lily," I said, my voice soft. She looked up instantly. "Hi, Mom. You are supposed to be at Grandma and Grandpa's party," I stated gently. "I know." I fought to keep my own voice steady even. "Why are you here?" She paused for a moment, then gave me the answer in that flat, rehearsed tone a child uses when they have already turned the words over and over in their mind. They said there was not enough room for me. I felt something inside my chest freeze solid. I walked over, pulled up a chair beside her, and just gathered her into my arms. I held her there, tight, while a slow, hot anger began to build deep inside me. But I did not let it show. Not yet. If you have ever been made to feel like an outsider by the very people who are supposed to love you no matter what, let me know. I need to know I am not the only one. This story gets a lot darker before the light starts to come in. I held her for a long time, just feeling the quiet rise and fall of her chest against mine. She did not try to pull away. She just leaned into me, clinging as if she were afraid I would disappear. Finally, I eased back just enough to brush a stray piece of hair from her forehead. "Sweetheart," I whispered, "can you tell me exactly what happened, right from the beginning?" Lily gave a little nod, but the words did not come easily. She started picking at a loose thread on her sleeve, her gaze fixed on the wooden tabletop. At 7, she was not quite able to lay out a story in perfect sequence, so I had to help her, drawing it out piece by gentle piece. "Did you get to Grandma and Grandpa's house okay?" I began. "Yeah." Her voice was tiny, cautious. I rang the doorbell and Grandma opened it. She took a small breath. She looked surprised to see me, I think, like maybe she forgot I was supposed to come. I kept my face a neutral mask, and then what happened? She said the house was really, really full already. There were so many people inside, she told me to just wait on the porch for a minute because the grown-ups were talking about something important. A knot of dread twisted in my gut, but I just nodded. "Okay. How long did you have to wait?" "Not too long." Then Jackson came to the door. She paused, her little fingers worrying the fabric of her sleeve. He saw my bag with the ornaments and he kicked it. Just a little. Not hard, but it slid across the porch. She looked up at me. He laughed and said my holiday dress looked cheap. He said it did not match the nice clothes everyone else had on inside. Jackson. My sister Ashley's son, a couple of years older than Lily and born with a smirk permanently attached to his face. I could picture him perfectly, standing in the bright doorway, bathed in the warm light from the party, and I could picture no one stepping in to correct him. Did any of the adults say anything to him? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. Lily just shook her head. Grandpa was standing right there, but he just told everyone not to make a fuss. And then Grandma said it again, that there were not enough chairs for dinner and that it would probably be better if I just came back some other time. Better if she came another time. As if my daughter was some minor appointment they could just reschedule. What about the gifts you made? I pressed, keeping my tone perfectly even. She said it was not a good time to bring them in. She told me to just take the bag back home with me. For the first time, Lily's lower lip began to tremble. I tried to give her the one I made just for her, but she just looked at it and said, "Maybe later, sweetie." I had to swallow hard, the image searing itself into my brain. My little girl standing alone on that freezing porch, holding out a gift she had spent weeks crafting with her own hands, only to have it dismissed. "And your phone was dead?" She nodded. I asked if I could use their phone to call you. Grandma shook her head. She said that would just complicate everything and that you were busy at work anyway. Busy. Right. Then Grandpa said I should just walk home. He said it was not that far and our neighborhood is safe. Safe for an adult, perhaps. Not for a 7-year-old girl carrying a bag in the pitch dark, with the wind starting to howl down from the Colorado mountains. "How was the walk home?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper now. "Cold," she said, with the simple finality of a child. I kept thinking maybe someone would notice I was gone and come get me, but nobody did. I did not know the way perfectly at first because we always drive, so I had to stop a few times under the streetlights to remember which way to turn. My hands got really cold from holding the bag. Every single word was like a physical blow. I could see it all with horrifying clarity, her tiny figure hurrying down the dark sidewalk, past houses glowing with warmth and holiday lights. Every house lit up except for the one she had just been turned away from. I could feel the fear she must have felt, a fear she was too proud or too well-trained to cry about. When she finished her story, the kitchen fell into a profound silence. I pulled her into another hug, resting my chin on the top of her head. "You did absolutely nothing wrong," I told her, my voice firm and clear. "You were kind. You brought thoughtful gifts. You were polite. If anyone in this situation should feel bad, it is the people who sent a child out into the freezing cold by herself." She made a tiny, muffled sound against my shoulder, a mixture of relief and lingering doubt, as if she desperately wanted to believe me but was not entirely sure she could. I stood up, still holding her hand. "Come on, let's get you warmed up." I made her a cup of hot chocolate just the way she likes it, with extra marshmallows floating on the rich, dark surface, the steam curling up into the air. We moved to the living room couch, wrapping ourselves in a big, soft blanket, her head resting against my side. She sipped the hot chocolate slowly at first, then more quickly as the warmth started to seep back into her. For a long while, we just sat there in silence. I gently stroked her hair and let her just be. That anger was still there, a low, steady burn in my gut, but I kept it tightly under lock and key. She did not need to see my rage tonight. She just needed to feel safe. Eventually, her eyelids started to grow heavy. The mug slipped from her grasp onto the coffee table, and she leaned her full weight against me, her breathing deepening. I watched the faint, dried tear tracks on her cheeks as her face finally smoothed out in sleep. She looked so impossibly young, so fragile, and in that moment, something inside of me hardened into pure, unshakable resolve. I sat there long after she had drifted off, staring into the darkness of the living room, meticulously planning what would happen next. The house was finally still, the only sound the low hum of the refrigerator. I remained on the couch long after Lily's breathing had settled into the deep, steady rhythm of sleep, her small body a warm weight against me. My own mind, however, was racing. What had happened tonight was not just some spontaneous act of cruelty. It was the result of a pattern, one I had been watching unfold for years, a pattern that was woven deep into the fabric of my family. Growing up, my parents had always had a very clear favorite, Ashley, my younger sister. She was the star, outgoing, charming, always ready with a clever story or a booming laugh that drew everyone in. They would boast about her smallest achievements to anyone who would listen, her school awards displayed on the refrigerator like priceless artifacts. I, on the other hand, was the quiet one, the one who took longer to warm up to people. When I went through a messy divorce at a young age, after Lily's father decided to walk out without so much as a backward glance, they treated it as my personal failing. They helped me out once, with a single check that barely covered 1 month of bills, and then proceeded to tell all our relatives how incredibly generous they had been, as if that one act absolved them of any further responsibility. Ashley played her part as the perfect daughter, flawlessly. During my most difficult months, she would send the occasional brief text, "Thinking of you. Hope things get better." But whenever I actually needed help, someone to watch Lily for an hour, or a hand with groceries when I was sick, she was invariably too busy with her own life. It was never outright hostility. It was just a complete absence when it mattered. She cared just enough to maintain appearances, but never enough to actually show up. Then there was Grandpa Silas, my mother's father. He was the one person in my life who never made me feel like a disappointment. He was my steady rock, the one who showed love without conditions or keeping score. After the divorce, when I was a single mom scrambling to make ends meet working grueling paramedic shifts, he was the one who quietly stepped in. He covered a portion of the mortgage payment on my parents' large, impressive house every single month. The very house they loved showing off, because he wanted the family to have a spacious place to gather for the holidays. He would also slip me extra cash for Lily's needs, always discreetly, never making a show of it. But he was not a saint. We had our share of arguments over the years. He hated how fiercely independent I had become, how I would push away his offers of help because I was terrified of owing anyone anything. I still vividly remembered one major blow-up. He had accused me of shutting people out, of punishing myself more than was necessary. "You do not have to do everything alone, Sarah," he had said, his voice raw with frustration. I had shot back that relying on this family had not exactly been a winning strategy for me. We did not speak for weeks after that fight, but the financial support never stopped. We eventually patched things up with his usual gruff apology and my quiet acceptance. He was getting older now. His legs gave him trouble, especially on stairs. His energy was not what it once was. He lived by himself in a modest home just a short drive away, getting by with a walker on his bad days, but his mind was still as sharp as a tack. Lily adored him. He would let her help him in his kitchen, tell her stories about me when I was a little girl, and he always had endless patience for her drawings and her constant stream of questions. His entire face would light up when she was around, a stark contrast that made the rest of the family's casual indifference all the more glaring. What hurt the most, sitting there in the dark, was remembering why he had said he helped with my parents' house in the first place. "So there is always room for all of you," he used to say, especially around the holidays. "A family should have a place to come together when it is cold outside." He genuinely believed that. He had poured his retirement savings into making that a reality, and yet in recent years, his own family's visits to him had become few and far between. My parents would call him occasionally to check in, then act as if that brief phone call was a monumental effort. Ashley barely mentioned him, unless it was in the context of some future inheritance. Sitting there, I traced all those threads back. The favoritism was not new. It had fundamentally shaped how they viewed their obligations and who they believed deserved what. They had built their comfortable, showy life partly on Grandpa Silas's generosity, but they had come to treat it as something they were owed, not a gift given freely. And now, that same entitled mindset had been passed down to my bright, wonderful daughter, who was reduced to an inconvenience because she did not fit neatly into their party plans. The sheer injustice of it all settled like a lead weight in my chest. He had given so much to keep this family connected, only to be pushed aside as he became more dependent. And tonight, they had used the very space he helped pay for to exclude the one person who still looked forward to being a part of it all. I glanced down at Lily, sleeping so peacefully, and a fierce wave of protectiveness washed over me. This was not just about one awful night. This was about years of imbalance finally tipping over the edge. That surge of resolve pushed me to my feet. I could not just sit with this feeling anymore. I carefully carried Lily to her bedroom, tucked the covers around her, and then grabbed my phone. It was late, much later than I would normally call anyone, but Grandpa Silas was a night owl, and I needed him to hear this story, ideally, straight from Lily herself. I dialed his number for a video call, settling back onto the couch as the ringtone echoed in the quiet house. He answered more quickly than I had expected, his familiar face appearing on the screen, the warm glow of his favorite living room lamp behind him. His eyes crinkled in that special way they always did when he saw me. "Sarah," he said, his voice a bit gravelly but alert. "Is everything all right?" I hesitated for a second, then turned the phone to show him the empty spot on the couch beside me, before quietly explaining that she had fallen asleep, but I needed to talk. He nodded, waiting with his usual patience as I recounted the evening's events in simple, direct terms. The unexpected rejection at my parents' door, the fact that she had come home alone. Before I could finish, Lily stirred in her room, drawn out by the sound of his voice from the speaker. She padded out in her socked feet, rubbing her eyes, and climbed onto the couch beside me without saying a word. I angled the phone so he could see her properly. "Hi, Grandpa," she mumbled, leaning in close. His expression softened instantly. "Hey there, kiddo. Rough night?" She just nodded, then said one short, quiet sentence that landed with more force than any long, tearful explanation ever could. I think I must have done something bad. That is why they sent me away. The change in him was immediate. His face, which was usually so quick to smile for her, darkened. His brows drew together, and his jaw tightened in a way I had not seen in years. He did not interrupt. He did not rush to offer comfort. He just let her words hang in the air, absorbing their full weight. I filled in the few remaining details he asked for, keeping my voice low and steady. How packed the house was, the suggestion that she walk home by herself. He listened without comment at first, his eyes fixed on the screen, the lines around them seeming to deepen. Finally, he spoke, his tone measured but with a hard edge of steel. "I have helped them all these years because I thought that is what a family does. You keep a place for everyone, especially for the children." He paused, his gaze shifting to Lily again, then back to me. "I cannot accept my great-granddaughter being treated like she does not belong in that house." Lily shifted closer to me but remained silent, just watching him with wide, solemn eyes. He did not push her to say anything more. Instead, he addressed me directly. "You take care of her tonight," he said. "Make sure she knows that none of this is her fault." "I will," I promised. He gave a slow nod, the weight of the conversation visible in the way he rubbed his chin. "I need to think this through. We will talk soon." The call ended with his voice a little lower than before, almost gruff. "Sleep well, both of you, and lock your doors." The screen went dark, leaving the room feeling even quieter than before. I set the phone down and pulled Lily against me again, her head coming to rest on my shoulder. She did not ask any questions. She just let out a long sigh and closed her eyes, trusting that somehow things would feel better in the morning. I sat there holding her, replaying his words in my mind. There was no dramatic promise, no immediate threat of retaliation, Just that quiet, steely resolve that I knew so well. It was enough. It was enough to ease some of the tightness in my chest, enough to let me take a slightly deeper breath. Lily's breathing evened out once more, and I carried her back to her bed, lingering for a moment to watch her settle under the covers. Whatever was coming next, at least she had someone else in her corner, someone who saw tonight for the ugly thing it was. Back in the living room, I turned off the lamps and stood by the window for a long time, looking out at the dark, empty street. The cold night air pressed against the glass, but inside, things felt a fraction less heavy. The morning light filtered weakly through the curtains, but my phone remained stubbornly silent. I had already tried calling Grandpa Silas a few times, and with each unanswered ring, the knot of anxiety in my stomach tightened. He was not the type to ignore calls, not after the conversation we had had last night. A cold worry began to creep in, pushing me to grab my keys and get moving sooner than I had planned. Lily was just finishing her cereal when I told her we were going to pop over and check on him. She did not ask any questions. She just put on her boots and buckled herself into her car seat. The drive to his house felt much longer than usual, my knuckles white on the steering wheel as worst-case scenarios played out in my mind. His modest house looked eerily quiet when we pulled up. I could not see any lights on inside, no movement behind the windows. I knocked first, a sharp rap on the door, then used my spare key when I got no answer. The house was tidy, his walker in its usual spot by the armchair, but it was completely empty. As I stepped back outside, a neighbor watering her plants across the street caught my eye. "Morning," I said, forcing my voice to sound casual despite the rising panic. "Have you happened to see my grandfather today?" She set down her watering can, a slight frown on her face. "Saw him leave early this morning. Your parents came by in their car and picked him up. He did not look too happy about it either. Kept glancing back at his house as they drove off. That was all I needed to hear." I thanked her quickly, helped Lily back into the car, and headed straight for my parents' house. The route was painfully familiar. The same streets Lily had walked alone in the dark, but I forced the thought away, trying to focus on what was ahead. When I arrived, their driveway was empty except for their own car. I parked on the street and took Lily's hand as we walked up the path, her small fingers squeezing mine. I knocked hard, 3 sharp raps that echoed in the cold morning air. My mother opened the door just a crack, her expression shifting from surprise to guarded the instant she saw us. "Mom," I said, my voice firm. "Where is Grandpa Silas?" She hesitated, then opened the door a little wider, but kept her body blocking the entrance. "He is resting, Sarah. It is not a good time. I need to see him. Now." My father appeared behind her, his arms crossed over his chest. "Sarah, he is fine. We brought him here to keep an eye on him. He seemed very upset last night." "Upset last night?" I repeated, as if they had any clue what that phone call had really been about. "He does not live here," I replied, keeping my voice level for Lily's sake. "You cannot just take him from his home without asking." My mother's lips pressed into a thin, hard line. "He is our family. We are looking out for him, and he does not need any visitors stirring things up right now." Lily shuffled closer to me, her grip on my hand tightening. I could feel a faint tremor in her fingers and squeezed back reassuringly. "I am not leaving until I hear from him directly that he wants to be here," I insisted, taking a small step forward. My father just shook his head. "That is not happening. Go home, Sarah." The refusal hit harder with each repetition. I tried one last time, raising my voice just enough to carry. "Let me talk to him. Just for 5 minutes." "No," my mother cut in sharply. "He is sleeping and you are making a scene." Lily looked up at me then, her eyes wide with the same fear that was churning in my gut. The standoff stretched on, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. They were not going to budge, and every second they blocked that doorway fed the growing fear that something was seriously wrong. I pulled out my phone, my thumb hovering over the screen. My parents exchanged a look a flicker of panic in their eyes as they realized what I was about to do. "Are you seriously calling the police?" my mother asked, her voice filled with disbelief. "Yes," I said calmly. "I am requesting a welfare check on my grandfather, an elderly man who may have been removed from his home against his will." I dialed 911 and spoke clearly to the dispatcher. "Grandpa Silas, advanced age, mobility issues. Last seen being picked up early this morning by family members who are now refusing me access. There is a concern he may not be there voluntarily." I gave them the address and stayed on the line until they confirmed officers were on their way. My parents just stood there, their faces tightening with a mixture of frustration and alarm. The wait felt endless. The cold morning air bit at our skin as we stood on the same porch they would not let my daughter cross. A patrol car pulled up within minutes. 2 officers got out and approached the porch with a calm, professional air. My parents shifted uncomfortably, my mother smoothing down her sweater as if this were all just some minor embarrassing inconvenience. The lead officer asked a few direct questions. Who lived here? What was their relation to Grandpa Silas? Why had I called? My father tried to take charge. "Officer, there is no emergency here. He is my father-in-law, and he is just resting inside. This is all a big misunderstanding." The officer nodded politely but stood his ground. "Sir, we will still need to speak with him directly to confirm that he is all right and here of his own free will." My mother shot me a look of pure venom, then reluctantly stepped aside. The officers went inside, and we followed a few feet behind, Lily still clinging to my side. The house smelled faintly of coffee and the lingering richness of last night's party, but the atmosphere was heavy and suffocating. We found Grandpa Silas seated in the back living room. His walker was just within reach, a blanket draped over his lap. He looked exhausted, the lines around his eyes deeper than usual, but his gaze was sharp and clear when he saw us. One of the officers crouched down slightly to speak to him respectfully. "Sir, are you all right? Do you require any medical assistance?" He slowly shook his head. "I am fine physically. And are you here because you want to be?" There was a pregnant pause. Grandpa Silas glanced toward my parents, who were hovering in the doorway, then looked back at the officer. "No, I would like to go home." The words were simple, but they landed with the force of a judgment. My mother started to protest. "He is confused. He does not mean that." But the officer just raised a hand gently, cutting her off without being rude. "Ma'am, he seems perfectly clear-headed to us. We will assist him in leaving if that is his wish." They helped him to his feet, steadying him as he took hold of his walker. At that moment, Lily let go of my hand and moved forward instinctively, taking his other arm to help support him. He gave her a small, grateful smile as we all began to make our way out of the house. My parents just watched in stunned silence, all their arguments gone. The officers made sure he was safely settled in my car. The drive back to his house was quiet at first. He sat in the passenger seat staring out the window, while Lily reached forward from the back seat to rest her hand on his shoulder. I kept glancing over at him, waiting for him to speak. "Thank you," he said finally, his voice rough with emotion. "I did not expect it to come to that." "You do not have to explain," I replied softly. "We are just glad you are okay. We got him settled back in his own home." I made him a fresh pot of coffee and he sat in his favorite armchair by the window. He already seemed more like himself, the tension slowly easing from his shoulders. After a while, he looked at me directly. "I already contacted my lawyer this morning, Sarah. We should go now while I still have the clarity." Lily and I exchanged a look, but we did not question him. His lawyer's office was a small, reputable firm he had been with for years. The attorney, Mr. Miller, greeted us warmly and led us into a conference room with wood-paneled walls and shelves of legal books. He spread a set of documents out on the large table, adjusting his glasses as he addressed Grandpa Silas first. "Silas, we have discussed updating your will before," he began in an even tone. "The current version leaves the bulk of your estate to your daughter and her family, with provisions for Ashley as well. Changing the beneficiaries now is straightforward, as you are clearly of sound mind. But I am obligated to warn you. Disinheriting close family can lead to legal contests after you are gone. They could claim undue influence or question your capacity. Grandpa Silas listened intently, nodding slowly. I understand the risks, Mr. Miller. I have been thinking about this for a lot longer than just today. The lawyer turned a few pages, pointing to specific sections. We can redirect everything, the savings, the investments, your remaining property interests to Sarah, with a secure trust established for Lily's education and future. The structure is clean and revocable only by you while you are able. I sat there quietly, watching as Mr. Miller explained the legal safeguards, the need for a medical affirmation of capacity, and the presence of witnesses. Lily stayed right beside her great-grandfather, her small hand wrapped around his the entire time. She did not say a single word, just watched his face with that serious, knowing expression that children get when they sense something monumental is happening. He asked a couple of clarifying questions about timelines and how to best protect Lily long-term. The attorney answered everything thoroughly without rushing, making sure every detail was understood. When the time came, Grandpa Silas took the pen without a moment's hesitation. He signed where indicated and initialed each page with a steady, determined hand. The lawyer notarized the documents, 2 witnesses from the office signed, and it was done. He slid the finalized copies across the table, the profound weight of the moment settling over the room. Grandpa Silas leaned back in his chair, letting out a long, slow breath. Lily just squeezed his hand a little tighter, her eyes fixed on his face. Her silent presence, a testament that said more than words ever could. My phone started buzzing more than usual in the days that followed. The first real explosion came from Ashley. I was folding laundry when her name lit up the screen. I was tempted to let it go to voicemail, but something compelled me to answer. Sarah. Her voice was already cracking, thick with tears. What have you done? I stayed completely silent, just waiting. You manipulated him, she went on, the words tumbling out between sobs. He is an old man. He is confused, and you took advantage of him. How could you turn him against his own family like this, after everything we have been through? I leaned against the kitchen counter, forcing myself to breathe evenly. Lily was in the next room, coloring, oblivious for now. He was not confused, Ashley, I said calmly. He knew exactly what he wanted. She did not let me finish. This is about money, is it not? It always has been with you. You have always been jealous. Mom and Dad gave you chances, and you just threw them all away. Now you are stealing what is supposed to be for all of us, for Jackson's future, for the house, for everything Grandpa worked for. The accusations just kept coming, a torrent of resentment that had been building for years. She painted a picture of me as a cold, calculating schemer, the one who had whispered poison into a vulnerable old man's ear just to secure a bigger piece of the pie. Every claim was a twisted version of the facts I had lived my entire life. When she finally paused to take a breath, I spoke. You mean the house he helped pay for, while you all enjoyed the space? The same space you decided did not have room for a 7-year-old on one cold night? She faltered. That was different. It was crowded. Things got hectic. And sending her out into the dark alone was the solution? My tone remained low and measured. Letting your son mock her clothes while you stood by? Refusing to even let her use a phone to call her mother? It was not like that, she insisted, her voice rising in pitch again. You are just blowing it all out of proportion to justify this betrayal. I did not raise my voice. It is not betrayal to protect what is right. You have all been benefiting from his generosity for years, taking it for granted without a second thought. But when it came down to showing his great-granddaughter a shred of basic human decency, you could not even find room for her. She started crying harder then, her tactics shifting. Please, Sarah, just talk to him. Fix this. He will listen to you. Jackson deserves. No, I cut in. my voice gentle but firm. "You do not get to decide that anymore." The line went quiet except for the sound of her ragged breathing. Then, almost at the same instant, a text from my mother came through. It was a long, rambling message full of blame, calling me ungrateful, claiming I had broken my father's heart and destroyed the family. It ended with a threat to fight this in court, to prove that Grandpa Silas was not in his right mind. I read it once, then set the phone down on the counter. Ashley was still on the line, waiting for me to say something that would fix things for her. Instead, I said the only thing left to say. My daughter has learned how to stay silent from this family. Then I hung up. The phone buzzed again almost immediately. More texts. Another call from a number I recognized as my father's. I let them all pile up for a moment, reading the escalating rage, the shift from feigned tears to outright outrage. They accused me of isolating him, of poisoning decades of relationships for my own selfish gain. I did not reply to a single one. When the constant notifications became too much, I blocked Ashley's number, then my mother's, then my father's. One by one, I severed the connections with a few simple taps. There was no dramatic final declaration, no last angry message, just silence on my end. Lily wandered into the kitchen then, holding up a drawing of a rainbow for me to see. I smiled, took it from her, and hung it on the fridge without saying a word about the phone calls. She did not need to know the ugly details. Not yet. The quiet that followed felt different. It was cleaner, like closing a door that had been letting in a cold draft for far too long. There were no more explanations owed, no more defending choices they would never be capable of understanding. I deleted the voicemail notifications without listening to them, cleared the text threads, and turned my phone face down on the counter. Whatever came next, legal threats, belated regrets, I was not opening that door ever again. Looking back now, the change in our daily lives feels like a quiet revolution. Grandpa Silas moved in with us not long after everything settled down. We transformed the house to make it truly his home too. We installed wider doorways, a new ramp at the entrance, grab bars in the bathroom, and set up his bedroom on the main floor so he would not have to worry about stairs. He grumbled at first, of course, about being a burden, but the truth is, he brought the house to life. Our mornings started with the rich smell of his strong coffee. Our evenings often ended with him reading stories to Lily in that deep, steady voice she loved so much. And Lily, she blossomed in ways I had not even anticipated. At 8 years old now, she carries herself differently. Her shoulders are back. Her eyes are brighter. She started inviting friends over without a second thought, turning our living room into a pillow fort construction zone and our backyard into a grand adventure. Her laughter fills the house now, genuine, unguarded laughter, the kind that only comes when a child no longer has to second-guess whether or not they truly belong. Grandpa Silas watched it all with a quiet, profound satisfaction. He would join in when he could, teaching her card games at the kitchen table or showing her old photos that made her giggle at my younger self. He still had his good days and his tougher days with his mobility, but being surrounded by our little family seemed to ease his frustration. We kept our routines simple: walks in the park when the weather was nice, movie nights with a big bowl of popcorn, small traditions that built a foundation of security without any fanfare. As for my parents, I heard through mutual acquaintances that they had to downsize to a small apartment after losing Grandpa Silas's monthly help with their mortgage. There were no more big, showy holiday galas, the kind where the house overflowed with people and noise. Their life, I gathered, was much tighter now, more contained. Ashley and Jackson seemed to fade into the background as well. Any updates I heard were sparse and secondhand. I never sought out the details, and none ever came to me directly. The most significant shift was in Lily herself. She became more discerning about who she spent her time with, naturally gravitating toward friends who showed up for her consistently, who celebrated her without any conditions. One afternoon, I overheard her telling a playmate, "Real friends are the ones who make you feel like there is always room for you." She said it so casually, but it stopped me in my tracks. the way she had already internalized what truly matters. Watching her navigate her world with that quiet wisdom at such a young age made the distance from certain parts of our extended family feel less like a loss and more like a necessary act of protection. Grandpa Silas noticed it too. He would pull her close sometimes and say, "You have got a good heart, kiddo. You guard it well." Our home became a sanctuary of uncomplicated affection. There was no scorekeeping, no favoritism, just presence. And Lily thrived in it. Her confidence grew deep roots that I hope will hold her strong through whatever life throws at her. In the end, that is the simple truth this whole experience carved into me. Family is not just defined by blood. It is built in the small, everyday choices, by the people who make space for you without hesitation, who show up when it is inconvenient, who love you without keeping a tally. Sometimes, creating that safe, loving circle means drawing firm, painful lines, even with the people who share your history. It hurts, but it is necessary. In many ways, Lily taught me that as much as I tried to teach her. Seeing her choose kindness, seeing her surround herself with people who lift her up, it is all the proof I need that breaking away from what hurts you can lead to something so much stronger. If you are facing something similar, please know that protecting your peace and your child's peace is worth any price. True family is where you are valued, not just tolerated. End of story.